Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the meaning of life. And this is obviously a problem that a lot of people have tried to tackle. It's something a lot of people have tried to answer, we can say. And there's a lot of different answers. Some people say the meaning of life is love. Some people say the meaning of life is serving God. Some people say the meaning of life is subjective, right? So maybe it's up to the person to find it. Now, I'm here to tell you that the meaning of life is objective. And that objective meaning of life is pleasure, okay? The meaning of life is hedonism, is what I'm telling you. Now, a lot of people will disagree with this. A lot of people will say that hedonism is bad. A lot of people will think that hedonism comes with a negative moral implication. So, let's kind of dive into this. Why might people think that? Well, people might think hedonism is bad because, let's say you go out and you want something. Let's say you want sex, and your method of getting sex is to rape somebody. This is obviously a bad expression of hedonism, right? But let's also imagine the complete opposite side of the spectrum. Let's imagine you're a Buddha or something. Let's imagine you're Jesus Christ, and you want pleasure. How does Jesus Christ, or how does a Buddha acquire pleasure? Well, they probably just serve people, right? In other words, they probably dedicate themselves to others. And you might think this is a selfless endeavor. You might think it's entirely selfless. And there's no self-interest involved. This is completely delusional, okay? If you are dedicating yourself to others, it is because you think or you derive pleasure from that service. In other words, if you are dedicating your life to other people, it's because you perceive yourself in unity with those people. It's because you take those people as part of yourself. In other words, if you're dedicating your life to other people, it's because service to other people is pleasurable to you because you perceive that pleasure will come back to you. Now, this is called conditional love, right? But there's kind of a strange distinction here between conditional and unconditional love. So what conditional love is giving to somebody with expectation of return, right? And unconditional love is giving to somebody without expectation of return. A lot of people say that, and even I have said on this channel, that unconditional love is the way to a better world. It is how we have to kind of solve our problems. And I suppose I kind of disagree with that statement that I've made probably many times in the past. Because what I've came to realize is that when you truly perceive yourself in unity with the universe, including other people, when you truly perceive other people to be an extension of yourselves, when you truly take other people as part of yourself, the distinction between conditional love and unconditional love dissolves because that distinction relies on the assumption of separation, right? So if you define conditional love as giving to others with expectation of return, and you define unconditional love as giving to others without expectation of return, then if you truly perceive yourself in unity with everything else and everyone else, then you can't perceive then there is no assumption of separation that those definitions rely on, that those definitions of unconditional and conditional love rely on. In other words, if you truly perceive yourself in unity with the universe, then service to others is service to yourself. And likewise, service to yourself is service to others, okay? And yet, I can still behave selfishly and I can still behave selflessly. And the reason that occurs is because if we are not strong discerners, then what will happen is we will serve others at our own expense, or we will serve ourselves at others' expense. So, in order for hedonism to be the meaning of life and to be a morally strong philosophy to follow, you have to be a strong discerner. You have to discern between the types of selfish service and choose the ones that don't negatively affect others. And likewise, you have to choose the type of selfless service that doesn't negatively affect you. Okay? So this requires, it does require very conscious discernment. It requires perhaps a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of consciousness. You have to realize how your service to self will affect others negatively, and how your service to others will affect you negatively. And if we take that rape example, if you rape somebody, that's negatively affecting others and serving yourself. You're not discerning very well. And in the long term, that lack of discernment will come back and bite you in the ass, and you're going to be sitting in a prison cell, right? So it is that punishment that teaches you the lesson to become a better discerner in order to seek the pleasure of sex through a more sustainable manner. So through discernment, we come up with better ways to sustain our long-term hedonism. But still, hedonism is the foundation. It is the thing that drives us to become better discerners, because we wish to sustain the hedonism. Whereas if you never become a better discerner and you just go and rape somebody to fulfill your desire for hedonism, your desire for pleasure, it's not going to be very sustainable, right? And likewise, if you go out and serve others at the expense of yourself, let's say you're going to a homeless shelter and you're feeding a bunch of people, or you're giving all your money away to the point where you're not even eating yourself and you starve to death, you're not a very good discerner. And now you have lost the ability to serve others. So if you want to serve others in the long term, and if you garner pleasure from serving others in the long term, you can't do it very well if you're not feeding yourself because you're too busy loving others, right? So hedonism is the foundation. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that all forms of hedonism are good. What it means is that hedonism is the driver which encourages us over time, through conscious discernment, through consciousness, to become better discerners, to better sustain our long-term ability to experience pleasure, to experience hedonism. So hedonism is the meaning of life. There is no shame in seeking hedonism if you are doing so with good discernment, if you are being integritous in your hedonism, right? If you have that integrity, if you are paying attention to how your actions affect yourself through others, and how your actions, how your own actions, your own pleasure of your own self-pleasure affects others, then hedonism is a perfectly fine motivator. It's a perfectly fine meaning or purpose of life. So thanks for watching.